Hi, welcome back to another episode of building a Trello clone using the need stack. So the last time when we left off, we have created this this HTML this component, which allows us to add our information here and also add card information, right? And we have also mapped a model onto the HTML. So before we begin, let me create a new branch first. So I will create a new branch. If you want the previous branch, check out the part 4 branch. So I will go git check out. Let's be part 5. Okay, just to be sure. Okay, so I will now go into the front end, and we will. Okay, so let's have a quick review. So this is our HTML, and we have the and this is the component. Okay, so we have created a model, the bot group, which is the form group, and the cards array. Okay, so the bot group will have all these attributes, all these form fields. So these are the form fields, right? And we have mapped the the fields to the form using the form control. So things here for form control, okay, form control, and also form arrays and form groups. Okay, so we have mapped the model to our HTML component. Okay, so what we want to do today is this: we want to set form validation so that people cannot just your users cannot just click create to to submit an empty form. Okay, so what we want to do is this: we want to make title created by and description mandatory. So before we do that, let's go and put a little star, a little red asterisk on top of this, just to mark them out as being mandatory. So we want to only affect this component. So we will add the CSS to. So we will do the CSS on the components CSS. So what we will do is this: we will get the component. Okay, component, and so let's make it first of all. Let's make this title a little bit bigger. So we can say form control, form from group label. Let's set their size, font size to be 1.3 em, and font width to be bold. Okay. So so it's a bit bigger. So I'm going to put a little red star on top here. So we will do like this. So what I'm going to do is this: I'm going to create a class called required here. Okay, and required here, which will mark them out. Okay, so so what we'll do is this: we'll go form group required label after. I'm using the after pseudo class. Now it's a content, a little star, and then the color, let's put it red. Okay, like that. Okay, so let's I just want a little space between the star and the label. So I would just say margin left, maybe 1 pixel. Okay, just a little bit. Okay, so I also want the little star to be on top here, on top of this description. So let's see where we are first. So I want the star to be here. So let's go like this. Okay. So what I'll do is this. I will say I'll use the table class, and then I'll say th. So since they're the same, I will just put them here. So it's table th required after. Okay, so we've got that. So now we are going to add the required validation to this field. Okay, so let's go back to our component. And what we're going to do is that we need to import in the validators class. Okay, so let's go to the Angular form. So let's go Angular IO and look at the documentation for this. So we want validators. Okay, so this is for validating the form. So you can have things like required, email, minimum length, max length, and then you can have like pattern and other stuff like me. Okay, so what we will do is this. So you come to the form group here. Okay, so we say title is required. So here you put an array because you can have more than one validation. You'll say validators. This is required, and we'll say the title. The minimum length for the title is maybe 3. So we'll say validators min length is 3. Okay. Okay. So this guy here. So this validators also required, but I want this one to be an email. So the created by has to be an email. So I want the email. So we will say validators email. Okay. So the comments is optional, so I'm going to leave that as it is. So I also want the description to be required as well. Validators, okay, required. However, I don't need a minimum length for the description because the description can be one character. Okay. So now that we have added validation to our model. So how do we use this validation? So let's have a look at this. So so once we have added the validation to our field, our form can actually use this information to let us know if the form is valid or not, if the form object is valid or the form group is valid or not. And the way you access them is like this. So let me just show you first. There are a few properties that you can access. So let me show you. So the form group. So if you look at the form group, there are a few information that you can get. For example, like valid, invalid, whether the form is disabled, whether it's dirty, whether it's pristine. So we can look at some of this afterwards. But the most important one currently for us is the valid and the invalid status. And this is what happens. So let me just show you first, and then we can implement this. So let me just put a div here. Okay, and then I will say like this, valid. I'll just show you. So you just take the bot group, and you will just say valid. By the way, this double bracket here means evaluate the expression and display it here. Okay, so I'll invalid. Okay, so if I do this, and we now go back to the form, so you notice that valid is false because I've set this to be true. I've set this to be required, and the length has to be 3 characters, and invalid is true, right? So if I now type my to-do, okay, and I do this at here, thread email. So notice that this has changed, okay, and if I remove this now to 1 character, this has changed to false, okay. And also notice that if I now, so now this is true, right? But if I now add a new card, this one, the validity of this form becomes false again because this is a mandatory field. So if I add a character here, this becomes true. Oh, yeah. Okay. So we can use this information. What we're going to do is that we will bind this information to this button to enable and disable the button according to this status. So one other thing I would like to do is I would like to set a default value for priority. So if we look at priority, they've got like 0, 1, 2. So the way you set a default value is to come back here and just set the priority to 0. Okay. So let's have a look at this again. Okay, so this is 0 now. Okay, so what we're going to do now is this. We're going to bind this information to this button. And the way we go about doing that is to look for the submit button. Click here. And then we'll say, we'll use the attribute binding, and we'll bind this to the disable attribute. So we will say bot group dot invalid. like that. So maybe I will move this thing guy down here. Okay. So now you'll notice that I can no longer press this guy because it's disabled. And if I type the information, okay, this becomes enable again. So I can actually press this button. Okay, so let's try that again. So we can go thread email, and so if I click the add, this becomes disabled. And if I now add a little character here, this becomes enable again. Okay, we can also do more than that. Since we are using Bootstrap, we can integrate Bootstrap's CSS validation into our form. So let's have a look at Bootstrap form. Okay, and let's look at here validation on server side. So this is what we want to do. Okay, we can dispense with the valid. We'll just mark fields whenever they're invalid. So the way to do that is to add the let's see. Okay, is to add the is invalid CSS class to the input, right? And then you can have a little feedback information by providing the invalid feedback. So what we will do is this: we will use a form. We'll use a Angular attribute called ng class to dynamically change, enable or disable the is invalid CSS class according to the form's validity, okay, or rather the field's validity, okay. So what we want to do is this. So let me just show you first. So we want to do this is invalid, okay. So we want to enable this invalid, but we want, instead of base the validity based on the whole form, we want to base the validity on a particular field, on this field, right? Okay. So to do that, what we can do is this: we can access the individual control and check their validity. Okay. So this is what we do. I'm going to write a method in here. I'm going to write a method called is control valid, and then it's going to take the control's name, which is a string, and then it's going to return a boolean. Okay, so this is what's going to happen. So the control. So remember the control. These are the controls, right? It's in the bot group. So this is what we do. We can say const control equals to this bot group. We will get a control name. So the control name we pass in as a string. So if we want to access title, this thing will be title. We get a control name. Okay. The get returns something called an abstract control. We need to cast it to a form control, like that. Okay, so I need to import form control. Okay. So we will import form control, and then we will say return control valid. Okay. So very simple. We pass in the name of the control, like title created by comments or whatever. We get the control from the group, and then we check if it's valid. So just like we are checking the validity of the entire form. So to use this, what we're going to do is this. Okay. So for this title guy, okay, we are going to okay. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to use ng class. Okay. And then, oops. Okay. We're going to use ng class. And then we're going to say is invalid. Okay, so this is the CSS class. And then we'll say is control valid. And then we'll pass in the name of the control, which is title. Okay, and this should be a not, like that. Okay, so now once we refresh this, right, because the form is invalid, so that's why we get this round little red line around the input. Okay, we can do the same thing for the created by. So this guy created by. Okay, so notice that. Okay, so we will now put in the um, the invalid feedback, the text. Okay, so we can say this. We can say invalid feedback. So we can say title must be longer than 3 characters. Okay, right? And then we can do the same thing for this guy. This created by. We will say, please enter a valid email. That's the case. Okay, like that, right? So it's not very good. It's not very good to uh, to highlight the form in red when a person, when we first look at this control, look at this form, right? Because you're saying that you're flashing out. You only want to highlight red if the person has entered incorrectly. So to do that, right, the form in the Angular form group has an attribute called pristine, which lets us know whether the form has been modified or whether the field has been modified. So we can combine pristine with uh, with with invalid. So we can say, if the form is, or if the field is pristine, then treat it as valid until the person touches the form and the form is invalid. Okay. So this is what we'll do. Okay, we can come back to here, the control here, and then we can say this control. Okay, pristine. PRI. Okay, so either it's pristine or it's valid. So if you notice now, the all the red, the invalid CSS has gone away. And if we touch this now, and we don't follow our validation rules, this thing will come up, right? So if you touch it, say like this, it will come up. So, but if I enter the whole information, it goes away. So it goes away. Okay. So we also want to highlight this guy because this is also we must also you know allow the person, because since this is uh, a mandatory field, we also want to perform the same visual, have the same visual notification for this field as well. Okay, so but this is a little bit tricky because this is an array. So let's go back and have a look. Okay, so this is an array. Okay, so what we will do is this: we will modify its control form slightly with this. So let me just copy this down here first. Okay, so we can put this down here. Okay, right. So this is the description, and we can modify this slightly by passing in the index. Okay, so like, oops, like that. Okay, and this is what's going to happen. We will modify this guy by saying index equals to -1. Okay, so we'll say this. So we'll say if the index is equals to -1, okay, then the control is just a regular control. So this is for these guys here. So these guys here, okay, right? But if it is not -1, so because the index starts from 0, if it's not -1, then what we want to do is this: we want to retrieve the group from our array, our cards array. So this is what we do. Go cons. We go this card array, right? Controls. and then we'll pass in the index, and now we'll just say control, same thing, equals to group get the control name. Okay, like that, and then as form control as before. Okay, so let's have a look. So now we go this and we touch it and we leave enter, we get that. But if we enter the form, or if we type in something, then the invalid CSS goes away. So same thing here. Okay, to do. Okay. So this is like thread email, right? But if this is invalid, then the form comes back up. Okay. So one other thing you might also notice is this. So this one, this is a required field, and the number of characters is three, right? But notice if I just enter three blank characters, three spaces, you treat this as valid because Angular, the form validation, the minimum line treats three empty characters as as a valid string. Okay. So what we can do is this: we can check if we can add another validation to check if if this is really really a non-empty white non-white space string. Okay. Unfortunately for us, Angular validators validators okay do not have such a validation. So we can actually write the validation, a simple validator. So it's very, very simple. So all you need to do is just implement this validation function. Okay, so this is the validation function. Okay, so the validation function takes one parameter, which is of type abstract control, and returns something called validation error. Okay, so return something called validation error if there is error, and returns null if there is if there is no error. Okay, so all we need to do is just write a function for just write this function. Okay, so this is what we'll do. So we'll implement our own a custom validator to validate that the field is actually non-white space. Okay, and we'll use the JavaScript trim function. Okay, so this function. Okay, trim. Right. So this is what we do. So we'll go back and let's import these two classes, abstract control and validation errors. So since it's growing long, I will split this up. Then I will go abstract control validation errors. Okay, so let me just check if I get it correct. Right. So now we'll just write a simple function here. I'm going to call it non-white space. Okay, and this function, according to our definition, has one parameter. I call it control. It's of type abstract control. Okay, and what it will do is this. It will do this. Okay, it will check. You can say if control, okay, value, getting the value. So if you recall, we use the value to get the value of the form here, right? So it's the same. So for a single control, you get back the string, the value field. Okay, and then we just say trim, because that returns a string, and then we check the length. Okay, so if the length is greater than 0, then we return null. Okay, otherwise we'll return. So let's have a look at this validation error. So validation error is just an array of anything. Okay, so the key is some string and the type is of anything. So we can say like this. So we can say, non-white space true. Okay, so as validation errors. So we want to return this as a validation error. So now we can use our custom custom validator here. So let's just move this one down here. Okay, so this one, so non-white space. Okay. So created by, we'll leave it alone. And this guy as well, non-white space. Okay, so let's try again. Okay. So now, even if we put any number of white spaces, it will still be invalid because of our custom validation. So if I now go, my to-do, it's clear, thread, okay, and this is the same thing as well. Okay, so I can put, to my task 1, okay, and I can go, sorry, so I can go add cut to add my form. So now I've added form validation to our form. Okay, so just one last thing. So notice this one, right? I would like to add, I would like to change the cursor, from a pointer, to a not allow. So we can look at CSS cursor. So these are the list of cursor. The one that we want is this guy, not allow. Okay, so this is the one that we want. Okay, so the way we go about doing that is we're going to go back to our CSS, components CSS, and then we can say button, if it's disabled, okay, then the pointer, or sorry, the cursor should be not allowed. Okay, so that's one final thing. Okay, so now notice that. So if I go my to-do, email, and now that's changed back. Okay, so so that concludes this this episode of building a Trello clone using Angular and the neat stack. So what I'll do is this: I will check in the code. So if you want the code, again, it is in the fifth the branch called part 05. So next time, what we're going to do is this: we're going to add. We may want to. So the next time we will probably add some animation. So notice that when I add this card, the card come out very abruptly. So we will add some animation, to allow it to come up, nicer, maybe like, fade in. And when we delete this thing, it will slowly fade out. So we use Angular animation to make this thing, look slightly nicer. Okay. So till next time, don't forget to tune in. Again, if you want the code, check out the part 05. Okay, and the repository is here. Okay, so this is the repository. So thank you and stay safe.